Welcome to The Sideshow. Welcome to another edition of The Sideshow. Mark is going to be taking the helm on this one. So, Mark, why don't you tell everybody what we're going to be talking about?
All right, well, thanks, Mike, and welcome everybody to another edition of the Sideshow. Just a little housekeeping here. We're now a number of episodes into our third season here, and we want to thank everybody that's been listening. Those of you that are new, please feel free to subscribe and like the show and leave some comments about some material that you'd like to hear about. We've gotten just about every request in at one point or another. So please engage with us if there's some stuff that you want to hear about. And certainly if there's some other material that you'd like to look at. I mean, we've got over 75 episodes in the tank here. So whatever platform that you're viewing on, feel free to go back. You're going to find stuff from the 50s all the way through, the MTV era when albums started to fade out, got a lot of material in there. And including we're starting to hit some bands that we're seeing kind of a number of albums from. Today, we're going to be talking about Dire Straits, Brothers in Arms. We've done some other Dire Straits material, so if they're your band, you'll find some stuff in our catalog as well. But today, we're going to focus on an album that was a really it was a sign of the changing times, the shift away from a lot of the albums that we've been talking about over these past couple seasons, and into a new era of music. This was the beginning of the CD era. This was the beginning of the MTV era, and this album, Brothers in Arms by Dire Straits, played a big part in that transition. I'm excited to talk about it because of the music, but it's important to talk about it because it was a sign of the end of the classic rock album era in a lot of ways. So I'm excited to talk about it today. We've done some other conversations about Dire Straits. Dire Straits did quite a bit of transformation from the time that they formed in 1977. They formed in London. Some of the members of the band were from Scotland, but they actually formed in London in the late 70s, and they went through some personnel transitions. But as they found themselves getting ready to launch this album, they had really kind of developed a sound and a style that people had come to know and was becoming increasingly popular globally.
I remember this album primarily because I saw Dire Straits in concert it was August 2nd of 1985, and it was right before I moved from Appleton down to Milwaukee with a good friend of ours. In any case, I'd gone to college right after high school in Minnesota for a while, and then had moved back to Appleton for about a year, and then ended up going down to Milwaukee. But from Dire Straits' first album, the Sultans of Swing was very big on the radio. I can recall just sort of liking it. I liked the guitar sound. I liked the manner in which Mark Knopfler sang. It had kind of a unique, fresh, but still, just plain rock and roll type sound. And I more or less followed Dire Straits. I wasn't necessarily a huge fan initially, but I mean, over time, I came to regard them as really a very, very good band. I mean, an album rock artist that was worthy of our attention. The Making Movies album, we did a podcast on one of the sides of that album, was, I think, when they really started to hit their stride as important artists. And then the Love Over Gold album, Telegraph Road and Private Investigations came out after that. I mean, really solid material. And they came out with a live album after Love Over Gold called Alchemy, which was, for a while, was kind of in heavy rotation for me. And decades later, I ended up getting a Blu-ray video disc with surround sound mix and everything of the same concert where they recorded most of the material for that album, so I could actually watch it.
Sure.
But any event, so that was kind of my history with Dire Straits. And this concert in August of 1985 was at the Milwaukee Auditorium, same place where we saw AC/DC when we were in high school.
Yeah.
But in any case, this album had come out a few months earlier, and I may have heard something on the radio, but I mean, the album had yet to get on my radar screen.
Yeah.
It wasn't so. I mean, I knew that Dire Straits had come out with a new album, but it wasn't the sort of thing where, oh, Dire Straits has a new album, and I went to the record store that day. My interest in the band wasn't at that level.
Yeah.
And the upshot of all this being, the first time I heard the songs off of this album was at that concert.
Mm-hmm.
And, as we get into the tracks, we can talk more specifically about things, but it was great.
Yeah.
I mean, it was great. There's no other way to put it. And I became just that much more enthused. And this album, in a lot of ways, it was kind of like the Dire Straits equivalent of Synchronicity by the Police. This was their fifth album.
Mm-hmm.
Synchronicity was the Police's fifth album. It was definitely commercially the biggest album of Dire Straits' career.
Yeah.
And really kind of the swan song for the band. I mean, there was one more Dire Straits album that came out, what was it, like 6-7 years later?
In 91, yeah.
Okay,
in
so
91.
6 years later. Which
on
was,
every street. Yeah.
Which was a good album, but it wasn't, it wasn't quite the same as Dire Straits.
Yeah.
And another thing, and I don't want to, get controversial right off the bat, but arguably not as strong as one or more of its earlier albums, which I think was also true of the Police and Synchronicity, despite the commercial success and mass popularity of the album. It wasn't necessarily their best. And I think that may be true with this album by Dire Straits as well. But it's a great album. And it was and is a great album.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting, and we'll come back to the album itself. I just kind of touching back on early listening to this, and I really remember when Sultans of Swing, we were still in high school, and just it was popular on the radio, listening to it in the car. I didn't own the album, but certainly heard it a lot, and the unique guitar style and sound was a part of it that caught your attention, and then the Mark Knopfler vocal voice, his style of singing was also unique and kind of stuck with you. And I think the interesting thing is you as you move through some of the other Dire Straits albums leading up to this. I mean, first of all, I'd agree they were an album band that produced some good, really good albums. And not a lot of big hits in there. Certainly nothing like some Sultan of Swing or Money for Nothing that came out of this one. There was some very popular tunes. They had some hits, but as far as like big attention getting things, they just weren't in there. But they were really solid albums that they came through. Again, we've talked about a side of one of them. There was a number more that I'm sure will come to come into our groove. And I would agree that this album, if you really had to stack rank all the albums, there was others that would come in front of this. The interesting thing about this album, the biggest song off this album, it was Dire Straits' biggest song, period, which was Money for Nothing, was on side one of this. And we're going to be talking about side two today. And I actually think when you look at looking at all the tunes, I really think that there was the weaker songs on this album were some of the other songs on side one. Is just kind of the way that I see it. I think that as a side, this side is a really strong side, a great side of music, and holds its own with a lot of the other material that they had. When you take a look at the other sides of music, I think another thing that goes along with that is they had kind of settled into a style and a type of music. A lot of this is driven by Mark Knopfler. I mean, this isn't so much of a, 4 or 5 guys that are working together. I mean, this is Mark Knopfler's show that's going on. And he had really settled into a style that he liked. So there wasn't as much just kind of like new, like I've never heard anything like this before on this album, right? And I also think you had some pressure from the record companies, as one of the things about this album was it was one of the first albums that was really targeted to be sold as a CD instead of an LP. And that, a lot of money into it. When we talk about the album cover, there's just some changes you're starting to see, with that.
All digital recording.
Yeah, yes. Huh. The recording process itself. I mean, everything kind of rolls in. So you're getting some pressure. It's like, look, we need this, album to pack a punch here, right? We want to have some hits on it. We want to have these types of things. Normally a band that has been pretty successful commercially over a series of albums, and Dire Straits was, by this point. They'd put out some good, not only critically acclaimed, but commercially successful albums. They had some rope, but I think with this targeting, there's going to be a lot of marketing, that type of thing, a big tour after it. I'm sure that there was a pressure to look, let's not get too crazy and experimental on this one, right? We want some hits, and we want some accessible music on this album. Not that Dire Straits' other stuff was not accessible, but I think the whole notion of let's keep this pretty straightforward. You don't have any 12-minute songs on this album or anything like that. It's song after another. It's got a few hits on it, and the bottom line is, there was a lot of people that knew of Dire Straits. I think they were growing in popularity, especially after the success of their live album as a live band to come out. So there's a lot of stuff that was kind of coming together for them to make a really big splash with this particular album. The last connection, you talked about the similarities with the Police. Sting actually performs on this album. He's on the song "Money for Nothing" again. We're not going to be talking about that today, but most people are aware of it. And then last thing historically, I first heard this album, at least as far as knowing, okay, here's this Dire Straits album and this song "Money for Nothing." And "Money for Nothing" was a huge MTV hit. At the time that this came out, I was stationed in Germany in the service. Didn't have MTV. So, that type of thing wasn't as big of a deal. We'd hear Casey Kasem's Top 40 and, this began to... So you'd hear a little bit of it. But I was actually I'd gone on a military trip up to England. I was in Felixstowe, England. This buddy of mine that I was traveling with and we just come across a ferry from the continent to Felixstowe, England. And we got in and we threw our stuff in our hotel and we went to a pub, which is what you did with these things. And they had some screens up in the bar, the pub that we were in, and the music that was playing, through the jukebox or whatever, was MTV videos. So you saw the video that was up there, and 2 or 3 times while we were in there, somebody played this song. They went up and requested it. So the sound of it, and then that visual with the neon headband, on Mark Knopfler and the other equipment, and then the kind of box robotic movers that were moving the stuff was catching my attention throughout the night. And about the 3rd time that they played it, I was kind of like, hey, quiet down a second. I want to listen to this with the crew that I was with there. And then after that, I think I bought the album when I got back to Germany. Just I kind of couldn't get the music out of my head or that type of thing. So, and then I guess the rest is history.
Well, and the visuals for the MTV video of Money for Nothing really fit very neatly into video game culture.
Yes. Yeah.
And which was a thing at that time. I mean, and this was people going to the video arcade, not people sitting, with a PlayStation.
Sitting at home with an Xbox. Yeah.
It wasn't like that. You had to go out to a place, to find the machine. Because I mean, at that time, I mean, home computers they weren't yet kind of as ubiquitous as they became.
No,
after
not
that.
at all.
I don't know, and you talk about the comparative merit of the sides, and it's not like we have to debate which side is better. But with that said, the first three songs on side one, So Far Away From Me, Money for Nothing, Walk of Life. Okay. Yeah. So Far Away wasn't as big, but you heard that on the radio.
Sure.
And those are interesting, good material, but neither one of those three songs, in my humble opinion, just in terms of musical quality and lyrical complexity, stands up to the material on side two.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the other two songs on side one, Your Latest Trick and Why Worry, they performed Why Worry at the concert I saw, and it's a beautiful song.
Oh yeah.
But it's the lyrical complexity of those two songs. They're about more relationships, potentially romantic relationships and whatnot. Which is a lot of songs get written about that. Nothing wrong with that. And they're very adult in just arrangement and tone and whatnot. And very pleasant listening. But I think despite the fact that, the argument, because Why Worry was on the radio, not as much as Walk of Life or Money for Nothing, but it was a song you'd hear. I think that the argument, that there is a much better argument that side two is the stronger side as a side of music. It was like, hey, which, play the side with the hits. Well, that's one way of looking at it, but no,
that's not how sides work, though. Yeah. It's the whole side. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's I'd say it's the side to choose. Both sides of this album would merit a podcast.
Oh yeah.
I mean, let's not.
And we may hear side one someday. Yeah.
Yeah. But side two is, I would say side two is the side to start.
Well, that's what we're going to do. Before we do a quick look at the album, right? You've got this is it here. I bought it in Germany. There's a lot of German on the back and the fine print. It was actually printed there, but it's identical in all other ways to the U.S. version. But this is a photograph of Mark Knopfler's guitar here, and it's a 1937 14 fret National style O resonator. That is what you're looking at there. Mark Knopfler, obviously a very interesting, unique guitar player. There's many an album through his soundtracks and that type of thing that you can find on Spotify or YouTube or whatever, where he's just playing the guitar, where you're hearing his stuff. A lot of his stuff out there if you enjoy it. So the front, pretty straightforward, simple, one picture and then the band and the name of the album. Again, they're thinking CD cover, not album cover when they're designing this art. Also, the back, very simple, right? This is actually it's not a photograph. It's a painting of the same guitar. One time I was on a work trip, I think down in Dallas, and this guy his office that I was working in, he had a poster of this, kind of a long, only about 2 feet wide, but maybe 6 or 8 feet. Really kind of cool that was there. Very simple. And then on the inside, and like a CD, you'd find like a little booklet or that type of thing inside of it with the lyrics and then some credits on the inner sleeve. There is, again, being an album, there's just a little bit of extra cool stuff. There's some really neat art as well on the actual labels of the album. Kind of all went together. Just, kind of a neat look, but it's minimal. Again, they're focusing on what is this going to look like on a CD, as opposed to taking advantage of all this possible space for art that we'll sometimes see on record albums. That's the record.
The National Guitar, and that guitar could be the subject of a podcast. I mean, it was
yeah.
it was played from everything from like Bukka White was a Mississippi blues artist, in the earlier part of the 20th century, played a guitar like that. John Hammond Jr., who was kind of a blues revivalist of sorts in the early 60s, play a national guitar. Johnny Winter, when he recorded his first album with the Muddy Waters Band in the later in the 70s, he played some songs with using a national guitar on his Nothing But the Blues album. So I mean, Paul Simon mentions it in his song Graceland, shining like a national guitar, and that's what he's talking about. Mm-hmm. He's talking about the metal shiny guitar. So and when at the concert that I mentioned in Milwaukee, it sort of made a big deal about strapping on that same guitar at the beginning of Romeo and Juliet.
Mm-hmm.
Really cool moment.
Yeah. Well, it's a beautiful instrument, and which, again, real quick, which makes a beautiful just piece of art just looking at it. Let alone the the unique sound and style of music that it produces. And Mark Knopfler's music, we're going to be hearing some of it today. He's got his style, his sound that he plays. It's consistent with a lot of the Dire Straits albums that are out there. I enjoy when I'm listening to it, and as we listen to some of these tracks today, you'll be able to hear it. But I enjoy listening to it, his ability to really exaggerate just specific notes in the way that he's picking the guitar. That's hard to do, right? To really be able to make, I've got a string of 20 notes and I want the 8th and the 12th and the 17th to really stand out in a different way than everything else that I'm playing, especially when I'm moving along at a fairly good clip, right? These are the types of things that, that I struggle to even comprehend how they're doing it. Obviously, folks that are better at guitar have a better feel for it, but you can really hear that in this music. And some of the guitar that we're going to hear it's slower paced. This isn't speed guitaring that's here. This isn't Robert Fripp, going to town on the guitar. It's a little more casual. It's a little it's a little slower paced. That doesn't mean that you're not really hearing some just amazing ways that the guitar sings to you, right, in what it does. And that's really something to listen for as we're listening to the music on this album.
Well, there's guitar players. There's a reason why you recognize fairly quickly when certain guitar players are playing.
Yeah.
I mean, Mark Knopfler, he just you like when he played on some of Bob Dylan's albums in the late 70s, early 80s, you could kind of tell. Yeah, you could recognize that sound. Think of say Carlos Santana. He's got a record, and or like a David Gilmour, Comfortably Numb style guitar solo.
Yeah.
And it isn't necessarily because these players are virtuosos on the guitar who have the sort of, like a Robert Fripp sort of, speed player. But they have their own style of playing, whether it's how they set their equipment up, whether they use a flat pick or a thumb pick or fingers or whatever it might be. They
Oh yeah.
no one sounds like him. And Mark Knopfler is one of those guitar players.
Yeah.
He created his own unique way of playing the guitar, and it's a style that I like.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And you can just hear it, and when the music gets quiet, and it's like, well, is this maybe taking a little bit of time? And then you can hear those notes start to come, and it's worth the wait.
Yeah.
Um, uh, he has a unique, very recognizable style of guitar playing,
And
all the way back to Sultans of Swing.
oh yeah, yeah,
You know?
yeah. And it also creates a mood that I also like. And we'll hear some of this, and it's a little hard to explain, but it's the type of music that can help you relax at the end of a workday. It can also be played at a party. It can be played like in the background when you're trying to get stuff. I mean, it really is appropriate to a lot of situations. It's not in your face intense, and it's not put you to sleep. It fits in this weird kind of mode right in the middle that fits a lot of different moods. And it certainly is one of the reasons why I've listened to Dire Straits, and I've listened to this album a lot in my life. Because there's times when depending on what the situation is, I want to listen to some music, and based on your mood, that normally crosses off a number of bands. It's like, I don't know what I'm going to listen to, but I'm not going to listen to Black Sabbath right now, right? Or this is there's a mood that you have, and there's so much of that where this just works, right? Where Dire Straits works, and we'll kind of see a little bit of this again. You're not going to have really, really powerful pounding type stuff, and you're not going to have stuff that is going to, is good to fall asleep to. But there's certainly some beautiful music, and there's certainly some tempo-driven music that is in there that you will be tapping your foot to. And that is enjoyable from that perspective. But it fits into this weird niche of things that really works well, and we'll see that through all the tracks that we're going to talk about today. So let me dig in now. Let's start talking side two. Unlike side one, which really didn't have a particular theme. This side does have a theme. It's very focused on the military, on war, on conflict. The album itself is titled "Brothers in Arms." The title track is the last song on this side, so the last song on the album. We're gonna hear a song that focuses on the soldiers who fight. We're then going to hear a song that talks about like the leadership of a society that is either warlike or is becoming warlike. We're going to hear a song about division, and then the final track is "Brothers in Arms," which really kind of talks about the insanity of why are we fighting? Why are military people fighting each other when the military people themselves have more in common than they do differences? So some of the insanity of all that. So the second side of this does have a theme that stays pretty consistent with obviously what they were thinking about based on the title of the album for all of them. So the first track is called "Ride Across the River," and the rivers are incredibly important when you're talking about the military and military conflict. I mean, you can go to World War II, and there was so much of the focus of the Allies of getting across the English Channel, much bigger than a river. But once they got onto the continent, they had to get across the Rhine River. And getting their armies across that river drove like a year and a half's worth of strategy that they were just trying to get themselves across the Rhine River. You see this you saw this in the Civil War.
Too far.
A bridge too far. That whole movie is designed around, these tens of thousands of people that their only objective is to get across this river. That is it. They didn't make it. They didn't get across the river. That, for those that have seen that, great movie if you want to check something out and see how important rivers fall. But very common for throughout time. Rivers were natural protection, and when you're on one side of the river, that river acts as one of the members of your military. So in any type of conflict, any type of soldier can tell you that getting across the river to the other side is a massive endeavor when you're talking about it, and that kind of is the theme. But the song itself talks more about the individual soldiers that have to do it. So why don't we listen to a little bit? We're going to listen to the beginning, and it's going to talk about two different types of military people. The first verse is about a soldier who is really fighting for a cause they believe in, right? This is they feel that they're doing something and they're fighting on the correct side. And then we're going to listen to that verse, and then these are short verses. We'll listen to the second verse. And now it's hard to say whether it's this soldier or whether they're talking about a different soldier. But now we're talking about someone who is more of a mercenary mindset, where, look, I fight the fights that I'm told to, or I get paid to fight. And we've kind of lost the notion that we're fighting for something that is just. So why don't we listen to that? We're going to listen to those two verses, and then we'll come back and talk about the rest of the song.
All right.
Now I'm a soldier of fortune, I'm a dog of war, and we don't give a damn who the killing is for. It's the same old story with a different name. Death or glory, it's the killing game. Gonna ride across the river, deep and wide. Right across the river to the other side.
Okay, so this song, first of all, it's got a very, South American type feel to it. There's a number of different instruments that you hear in there, from kind of almost like a mariachi trumpet to there's some flute, recorder type pipe type flutes that are playing in there. It's a foreign kind of South American kind of feel to it, right? You're in a foreign place, right? Is where you're at. And again, we start out with this person talking. There's words in the verse. Well, the cause it is noble, and the cause it is just. As I said, we've got a soldier who is fighting a fight that they believe in, and they believe in the cause. And one of the things that they have to do, we hear it in the chorus, is they've got to ride across the river deep and wide, and they've got to ride across the river to the other side that they hear. But then it transitions, and now it's a soldier of fortune and a dog of war. And there's people who look at this and say, well, they're looking at it from the perspective of two different soldiers. I kind of see someone who's been through a lot of battles in the military. Over time, they start to lose a little bit of the focus on what they're fighting for. So I really see that this is more effective when it's someone who started fighting for a just cause, say the Crusaders back in the days of King Richard. Right? That they started thinking they were fighting for a just cause, but by the end of it, they were the same people. They were just fighting to try to survive, fighting to get their wages, fighting to finally get to go home. And the whole notion of the cause had gone behind them, which is when you think about what that does to to the person, to the individual, it is one of the many casualties of war that transformation takes place.
It's kind of like you've got two lines of soldiers on the same road.
Mm-hmm.
One line is moving towards the front, and these are fresh soldiers who haven't been in battle yet, and they're all gung ho.
Yeah.
And the other line is on the same road coming the other way, and those are the soldiers that have been at the front, and are coming back for some R&R or whatever. And the ones that are just on their way and haven't dipped their foot in the water yet, so to speak, are they're all pumped up and ready to go, and the guys that are coming back are kind of looking at them and like, I wouldn't be so anxious, or I wouldn't be so impatient for this if I were you. I mean, a different kind of thing. This song was the opening number at the concert that I saw. I mean, I can still remember that percussion coming in, and just, well, this is interesting, and blah blah blah. I mean, it does. The music evokes the tropics.
Yeah.
And I think, given what was going on in, I believe, Central America, with Nicaragua, El Salvador, and whatnot, I think is what drew Knopfler's attention, or was kind of the background for this. And there was stuff going on, politically, covert operations, CIA and whatnot, and there, everything from Iran Contra. I mean,
yeah.
Well,
the Falkland Islands as well was going on at this time, which was also, again, kind of a lot of powers that were focused on things going on in South and Central America.
Well, and a lot of it had to do with there were a lot of people that made a lot of money, whether it was selling arms or whatever, in these various machinations that were going on, the root of which was this conflict between right-wing and left-wing governments in these countries where the political situation was relatively volatile at that time. And the United States was involved, blah 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 blah, and Eugene Hassenfuss, the pilot that CIA pilot that got shot down, and stuff like that was going on. And so it really was a scenario that would provide a cynical take on what soldiers were actually doing. And this kind of reflects the two sides of the someone who's willing to go in and fight for a cause they believe in, and others are I don't even remember why I came. I know I'm going to get paid, and have some adventure in the meantime. Death or glory, it's the killing game. It's all the same. No, good. I mean, there's substance to the song, and it does, and that you kind of come through a clearing in the jungle and see the river that you've got to cross. I mean, that imagery is the music evokes that kind of imagery, and another potential symbolic aspect of the river and crossing the river is, kind of like once you've gone into battle, whichever kind of soldier you are, you've kind of crossed a Rubicon. I was never in the military. I've never participated in combat. And won't. And so that's something that I will never know the experience of that. And there's a lot of soldiers that do, who survived, and they'll always know, and they occupy a place that those that haven't had that experience ever will. And so
they've They've crossed the river.
They crossed the river, and
Yeah,
so there's the river is a good symbol lyrically for this song on a number of levels.
Yeah, and I mean I agree with you that one of the great things about this song is that the feeling that the music, just the mood and the feel of the song really aligns with, the story that they're trying to tell, the message that they're trying to get out. And, it concludes the final verse of the song really just, which we didn't hear, but it basically just says things become confused and get turned upside down as this whole process continues. I mean, right becomes wrong, left becomes right. I mean, pretty quick, you don't know what you're doing or where you're going with what's happening. And I mean, historically, that's war and military action is like that. I think that, looking back now with the hindsight of history and whatever, I think a lot of people look back and like during the Vietnam War, it's like, what the hell were we doing? It's things taking actions that just made no sense. They were trying to be incremental. They didn't want to retreat. They didn't want to look weak. They didn't want to go too far. So the ways that decisions were being made had nothing to do with, if we're going to fight this war, how are we going to win it? And obviously the people that got caught in that were the people on the ground there, the soldiers. And I do believe that this song, although the concepts that we're talking about are universal militarily, this, when you listen to the verses, really focuses on the mindset of the soldier that is there and doing it. So just an interesting tune, great way to start the side.
Well, and just kind of a last, you mentioned Vietnam, and also that just the confusion that can come in. I mean, from the film Apocalypse Now, when Captain Willard goes to the intelligence bunker in Nha Trang, and the colonel that he's dealing with, who's giving him the mission, is saying, "Well, Willard, in this war, things get confused."
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was a relatively extreme, example, as far as the subject of that film, but just the way, things get confused. And that's exactly what he was saying. Things get confused. Yeah. We don't really know what we're doing, and this and that.
And then that has shown itself time and time again in conflicts that we have been, after Vietnam, after this song, right? I mean, Iraq and Abu Ghraib hadn't happened when they wrote this song. I mean, this because war is timeless. That really makes this song timeless. Because everything that they talk about here has applied to every single whatever conflict they were talking about at the time. And there was a lot going on in Central and South America when this song was written, but there's been a lot since, and this applies just as well to everything that's happened, and probably for every military conflict that we're ever going to see. So it's very timeless, as is the next track. In fact, maybe even more so when we get into the Man's Too Strong. So I want to hear some of this first, because there's kind of this has some oomph, right, to it that it brings, which is more, I think, about the gravity of the situation. But let's listen to it, and then we can dive into our thoughts on the song.
All right, sounds good.
Well, I tried to be me, I've tried to be mine, but I spat like a woman and I soft like a child. I have lived behind walls that have made me alone, striving for peace, which I never have known. And I can still hear his laughter, and I can still hear his song. The man's too big, the man's too strong. around the courtyard, and they all did hear him say, "You always was a Judas, but I got you anyway. You may have got your silver, but I swear upon my life, your sister gave me diamonds, and I give them to your wife. Oh, Father, please help me, for I have done wrong. The man's too big, the man's too strong."
All right, so what we're focusing on here is, and there's a lot of, like, who specifically is this a specific person that they're referring to? This man, the man's too big, the man's too strong. Who is that? Is that different than the speaker? I've read some commentary on this that the person that they're dealing with was someone like in a position like, say, Rudolf Hess was in World War II, where they were active in the rise of a leader. And now maybe there's some second thoughts or things that are like, maybe we should back off this a bit. But now the man's too big, the man's too strong to stop. So if you look at someone like Hess during World War II, Hitler got to a point where he became untouchable. And now, regardless of what anybody thought, he was going to be doing what he wanted to do. And whether the people that supported him early on still supported him or not, they still had a hand in creating this monster. There's some relevance we could look at today, but we'll steer back to that. Let's get back to this particular song. I also see, like in the book Darkness at Noon, you see a similar type of character, someone who was very involved and active in the revolution, and now that revolution and the leadership had gotten to a point where they were too strong to necessarily have to worry about what the collective thought about how that they should proceed. They were on their own now. There's a point that occurs where the man's too big, the man's too strong. And, we're now all followers instead of participants in this. So pretty powerful message, and one that is also still very relevant today.
The reference to Rudolf Hess in some of the internet commentary about this song, I mean, that actually comes from something Mark Knopfler said in an interview. Mm-hmm. And he didn't say that I wrote this about Rudolf Hess, but he did mention as an example of the type of person that the lyrics referred to. And in the same interview, he talked about he wanted to do a study in guilt, hatred, and fear. Mm-hmm. They're good lyrics because they don't pin it down to something. There's some force that is causing the singer to not be what he wants to be, and to not be able to do what he thinks is right. There's some force, some person, something that is preventing him from doing what needs to be done. And it could be Satan, it could be himself, or at least at least the undisciplined or unprincipled aspects of himself. But it kind of talks about you can't get a little bit pregnant, and if you get yourself involved in a situation where you're at odds with who or whatever it is after things have gone too far, it's awful hard to back out or just kind of push the eject button and kind of made a mistake there. I'd like to be able to go back to before I got involved, and doesn't work that way. Yeah.
And the song, the verses and the singing are actually pretty toned down and smooth. There's kind of a smooth way to their talking. If you listen to what he's saying, though, I mean, he's kind of copping to some, I've legalized robbery, called it belief. I've run with the money and hid like a thief, rewritten history with armies and my crooks, invented memories and burned all the books. This person is starting to do an inventory of some of the things that they've done to get here, and that's done very smooth. And then suddenly, that when we get to the realization that we get that boom, boom, boom. I mean, there's just kind of a drive to it, and if you haven't heard the song before, it's a little jarring. The really kind of the shift in tone in the song. And this person, as we go through subsequent verses, including some of the stuff that we heard, they go back to this kind of calm recollection of some of the things that they've been through. But then we go back to the reality is this guy's too big and this guy's too strong. And I'd agree that it doesn't have to be any individual. This is what happens in places where, especially authoritarian type states get out of control. And we want to know, how did we get here, and how did this war start, and how did all this, death and destruction happen? Well, the man got too big and too strong. And this is what we were left with. And whether you're talking about Germany or Russia or any of the authoritarian states that have led to downfall. You could look at Venezuela and all types of different places where someone just ends up getting control and can't let go of it. And obviously there's some parallels in today's America. People should be thinking about before the man does get too big and too strong. Otherwise, we'll be having people be singing this song on a pretty regular basis going forward.
Mark Knopfler is a very literary guy. He was an English major in college, and he's a reader. The song "Telegraph Road." When you listen to it, and you listen to the lyrics, it kind of evokes Detroit. There is a Telegraph Road in Detroit, and so you're thinking, oh well, he was kind of writing about all the people driving home from the factories, 6 lanes of traffic, 3 lanes moving slow, and sorry, but the sign saying all the shops are closed. So it kind of the urban blight of Detroit. It makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, in an interview with Mark Knopfler that I read on the internet, he actually got the idea from the story from a book by a Norwegian author named Knut Hamsun, that was published in 1917, called "Growth of the Soil," and which I've read, and it's about a Norwegian who kind of goes out into the country, and he goes down this road. A long time ago came a man on a track walking 50 miles with a pack on his back. And then the community kind of builds up around him, and more people come out, and this and that, and that isn't the imagery that is in the lyrics, but that's where he got the idea.
Yeah.
And so Mark Knopfler, he puts a certain amount of literary thought into what he's doing. You mentioned the other point I wanted to make while we're still on this song is, the beginning of the song, it sounds like it's something from early Bob Dylan, acoustic only Bob Dylan. But then when you get to that chorus, the man's too big, the man's too strong, and boom, these sort of Telegraph Road style boom guitar booms.
Yeah.
Very different types of music. There is so there's a building intensity to this song, and it's sort of like, this started out so simple. How did we get here?
Yeah.
Which is kind of what the song is about. It is, and I like your reference to darkness at noon. Because I'm sure that Mark Knopfler had read that by the time he wrote this song. I guess I wouldn't bet the farm on that. But I'd be very surprised if someone with his reading habits hadn't read Darkness at Noon. Perfect example of the kind of the subject matter of this song lyrically.
Yeah. So if you look at where we progress, I mean, when you think about what you need, the different elements of war, military conflict, we started with, you got to have an army, got to have soldiers, right, to do this. Then you've got to have, the leadership of a country that is, prepared and has been built up and is powerful enough to direct war. It's hard, though, as we get to the third track, to send a nation to war if the people are not angry at someone, don't see someone as a villain. Now, this song also can apply not only to external or global conflict, but to internal strife as well. So the third track is called One World, and it starts out, we're going to listen to it in just a second, but you've got someone who's struggling to get what they need, right? And, this is we're going to hear the first lines are, can't find no sleeves for my records, right? Well, not a big thing, but, let's take the messages. I can't get enough food for my family. I can't pay the rent. The types of things that tend to piss people off that are trying to provide for themselves or their family. And then the idea that maybe there's someone to blame for this. So we're going to listen to the first couple short verses of this song, and then we'll talk a little bit more about it on the other side.
All right.
Can't get no sleeves for my records. Can't get no laces for my shoes. Can't get no fancy notes on my blue guitar. I can't get no antidote for. Ooh. Oh yeah. Much like the reasoning you use. Somehow your motives are impure. Somehow I can't find a cure. Can get no antidote for. Ooh. Oh yeah. Ooh.
All right, so here, okay, we've got this is not as calm of a feel. I mean, this is someone that is complaining, right, with the things that they're struggling to do, and then kind of at the end of each kind of verse, there's kind of a sigh of just like, giving up. Just, I can't get no antidote for blues, right? I've tried. I can't do it. Can't get these things done. And in the second verse, now we turn away from what the person is needing and the things that they can't get, and they point out that they can't find the reasons for your actions, or I don't much like the reasoning that you use, right? Well. Anybody that's spent any time on Facebook in the last year or so knows exactly what type of conversation is going on here. Just amazingly relevant to what we're seeing today. And this was 40 years ago that this particular song came out. So strife, conflict, anger, blues, right? That that people are experiencing, and it is a very active element when we start to look at conflict, war. It's a part of it. So it's very understandable why a song like this was included on this side.
I got a soft spot for this song because the first time I heard it was at the concert in Milwaukee. This was the third. They opened with Ride Across the River.
Yeah.
Then Espresso Love was a second track. And that kind of picked things up a little bit.
Yeah.
And then this was the third song. And, when Dire Straits performs live, there's a second guitarist that performs with Mark Knopfler, isn't the only guitar player. And there was a heavier guitar sound in the live version. I mean, it was a fairly in-your-face rocker. Although this version of it's the hardest rocking, one of the hardest rocking songs on the album, in my opinion. And it also it has the Dire Straits sound to it.
Yes.
I mean, some of that Telegraph Road, potent guitar, and it's really this song, the singer is sort of personally disillusioned, but is also talking about the sort of global alienation and the fact that that communities are even within an individual community, there are just groups of people that are different from each other. There's isolation, and their take on the world is not the same as their neighbors in their own communities and in the world as a whole. I mean, it's one world. So I mean, he's talking about he's referring to things globally. It's something ain't working. And it's you can look at it in an individual context or like a micro or a macro. Yeah. And we got problems in both. It's a very cynical take on things. I just want to get rid of my blues. I can't get no fancy notes on my blue guitar. Can't get no antidote. I think it's a great song musically and lyrically. I mean, this album came out 40 years ago.
Yeah.
But like the other songs so far on this side, has relevance today.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, this song has. This has, as in some ways, the most relevance in terms of today's world as any of the songs on. I mean, the Man's Too Strong, is pretty obviously something that has a lot of relevance now. But just for the average person listening to music, the lyrics really kind of resonate.
Yeah, well,
with how a lot of people feel right now.
Well, totally, exactly. When you hear lines like "Can't get no remedy on my TV," there's nothing but the same old news. They can't find a way to be one world in harmony. Can't get no antidote for blues, and can't get no remedy on my TV. Talk about locking in, right? It not only is there not a remedy, the TV's out there making it worse for what is occurring. And that the song "One World," that's obviously the aspiration, one world in harmony. But it's very clear that we can't find a way to be one world in harmony. So there's something that within the song is broken, and certainly something that we feel today. is broken, and whether it be the internal conflict, like you said, the micro or the macro of how this plays out, and the feeling of this music. We talked about this with some of the other songs. It aligns, the way the music flows aligns with the messaging, which is, I mean, it's the goal, obviously, in a lot of music. It's hard to land it, though. You know, you can have some lyrics, and there's a lot of bands where the person writing the music is completely disconnected from who's writing the lyrics, and you get some weird kind of things. We've had conversations about songs that something is talking about a situation that's horrible, but the song sounds beautiful, but this is a real close alignment. All these songs are. It's one of the things that I really enjoy about Dire Straits. The lyrics really align with the feeling that they bring the music. You can tell that Mark Knopfler was focused on, this is what I'm trying to get across here. And when you have one person that's really in control, it helps to kind of bring this thing together. But this is what I'm trying to message. So this is what it has to sound like, and this is what it has to feel like. And that's why I think they do an excellent job on this album. I mean, just Dire Straits does, period. But this is some really good examples of that coming together.
The and because this, as I say, on this side, this packs the biggest musical punch.
Yeah.
The drums and the bass and the guitar is just more in your face on this track than it is on any of the others on this side.
Yeah.
And as I say, it's the most reminiscent, in my opinion, certainly on this side, and potentially on the whole album.
Yeah.
It's the most reminiscent of earlier Dire Straits songs, and it's the sound of earlier Dire Straits albums.
Oh, it comes right in with that guitar on the beginning. Yeah. It's moving. It is again the topic content, but it's got a lot of energy to it, right? It's got a lot of get up and go in the song, and I'd agree with you. This moves you forward more than any other song on the album.
And lyrically, it's, I wouldn't say it's the most interesting song lyrically on the side, because I think that the lyrics on all four of these songs on this side are incredibly well written. There's enough specificity and ambiguity to, give the listener a little elbow room in terms of interpreting the songs in their own way. But the bridge lyrics in this song, they say it's mostly vanity that writes the plays we act. They tell me that's what everybody knows. There's no such thing as sanity. And that's the sanest fact. That's the way the story goes. I mean, which is kind of a very poetic way of saying, thanks to, self-serving pride, we're fucked.
Yeah. That's the way the story goes.
Yeah. That's kind of what he's saying.
Yeah.
Or at least he doesn't know the remedy.
And they don't. They've got no remedy for the blues. So that, that's the third track on the album, and we're gonna wrap up the fourth track on the side. The final track is Brothers in Arms. It's the title track of the album and the last track on the album. Last track on side 2 here. And we started the side talking about soldiers, and we're going to end it talking about soldiers as well, Brothers in Arms. Having been a soldier myself, this song really sinks in and is meaningful. If you've ever, really thought to yourself, yes, if the siren starts going off tonight, we got to go get on the plane and go. And yes, I'm going, and I'm ready to do that. I mean, there's a lot in this song that just rings very true with just that mindset and the way that it feels. And the whole notion of being brothers in arms, there's a pride in being in the military. There's a pride that you kind of connect with other people that were in the service and people that are in the military in other countries as well, including people that are potentially our enemies. And with that, and what this song gets at throughout the song is that, yes, we're all the people are humans are brothers to start with. But, people in the military, even more similar. It's like we're fighting with each other. You truly are. We're brothers in arms, but not just the people on our side. And, the song will start out, and we're not going to listen to the beginning. I want to listen to some of the guitar that comes in, which is just a beautiful, longing kind of sound to the guitars. And I think that longing is longing for peace that is evasive for the people here. But the song starts out talking about home, where this soldier is from. And that is a very powerful notion when you're in the military, especially when you're away from home. I lived in Germany for 6 years, and although I lived there and I had a home there, I never thought of it as home. And so the notion of thinking back to home, regardless of where you are now, very powerful thing for the military. And it starts talking about home, and then it transitions into talking about combat. So now we're talking about fields of destruction and baptism of fire. And this is all a very peaceful, kind of soft way that this is being sown. So it's not like we're in it right now. This is kind of recalling all these different aspects of someone's life, and it ends with, the end of a soldier's life, and as a time for a person to bid farewell, and it's time for them to die, and it's as they're dying they realize that we've been fools to make war with our brothers in arms, and just a very powerful message that comes out of this song, and just it's done, I think, in a very beautiful way.
Well, there are a couple of things, and this is a beautiful song, and this song was performed at the concert that I saw back in 1985, and it was the last song they played in their regular set before the encore. They came back and did Solid Rock, and then the theme from Local Hero. Which is something that Mark Knopfler plays often, or at least he did back in those days. And so it is just a beautiful song. And there's a couple things that it made me think of. I mean, there's the Bob Dylan song from way back, John Brown. John Brown went off to war to fight on a foreign shore. And he's describing his experience in battle, and then he says, but what scared me the most was when my enemy came close and his face looked just like mine. Mm-hmm. And there's a theater performance of a show. It's a musical, but it's called All Is Calm, the Christmas Truce of 1914. Mm-hmm. And World War One, in terms of the modern era, or our grandparents were alive in during the First World War, so this wasn't that long ago. And and in terms of that kind of time frame, World War One was just a brutal slaughter between the enemy combatants. But if you read about World War One, you don't read about a lot of personal animosity between the soldiers. And like when a soldier, when a soldier had surrendered, they treated each other well, usually. Yeah. And this show that I referred to called All Is Calm, and it kind of reenacts in a theatrical setting. And it was Christmas Eve in 1914, and some British and German soldiers said, "Fuck it, it's Christmas," and they met in the middle of no man's land, and they were they were talking to each other and shaking hands and where are you from and until the the big shots caught wind of it and like, hey, get your ass back here. We got to get back to business here.
Right.
But it just
Got a war going on here. Yeah,
it wasn't personal.
Yeah.
It's like you see guys smashing into each other playing football, and at the end of the game, they're talking. The guys from the other teams are talking to each other. Sometimes they'll get down and they'll pray together, whatever.
Yeah.
But it again, you served in the military. I did not.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can only imagine. But it's something that for someone who's paying attention, and not just to this song, but to the history of soldiers. Grant, like right after the surrender, Lee signed the surrender at Appomattox Courthouse. Grant told his soldiers, no reprisals. These as of now, these are no longer our enemies; they're our fellow countrymen.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of examples that could be pointed to in American military history, and world military history, since the founding of the United States, to suggest that the honorable soldier is doing what he's there to do. He's not doing it because he necessarily likes to kill. There are exceptions to that. But the true honorable soldier, and you go all the way back to Achilles, the Iliad, and while on the one hand, this is a grand heroic epic tale of battle, heroics in battle, but at the same time, when you read, if you read the Iliad, it can also be read as these guys just wanted to go home.
Yeah. Yes.
And
there, I think that the notion of honor with people in the military is incredibly important. There's a lot of things that I will see on the whether it be the news today or that type of thing. And one of the things going on in the back of my head is like, where is your honor? It's when you're dealing with people that are weaker than you or that type of thing, that's honor is important. And it's certainly something that is discussed at length when you are in the military, whether it be basic training or all the different avenues in between. Just an important thing. And that type of there's sorrow in the fact that all this stuff is going on in the first place, right? When you're in the military. So let's listen. I want to play the last verse of this, and then I want to hear some of the guitar that Mark Knopfler plays, because I think that it sounds beautiful, and it's also, though, it's appropriate. I connect this a lot with being away from home. When I bought this album, I lived in an apartment in Germany. It was a small apartment, small living room, and I'd have my stereo, and I could open up this door that I had and stand out on the balcony of my apartment and hear the stereo just fine. It wasn't like blaring and bothering neighbors. It's just kind of a small place, and it's the way that it worked out. But I would look out, and from my apartment there was these like a train track in front of the place, and then there was like a shopping mall that was on the other side of it. Not a great big thing, but kind of a small single story thing. And then you could look off way in the distance and you could see the Autobahn, right? Autobahn 6 that went by Mannheim, and that's where I'd be watching the sun go down from there. And that view, listening to this song, I mean, when I hear it now, I can still picture that view because I listened to it a lot then. And there's longing for home. There's the concern with just being in a foreign place and a little bit out of place from where you're at. Even if you're safe, you're a little out of place, and it's just a lot about that experience that this song really brings up in me. So let's listen to this part of the song, and I'll be I'll be picturing myself on that balcony while we're doing it.
All right.
Now the sun's gone to hell. The moon's riding high. Let me bid you farewell. Every man has to die, but it's written in the stars. In every line in your palm, we're fools to make war on our brothers in arms.
So just a beautiful feel to that guitar. I mean, you can hear the sorrow and the sadness that comes from it. You can hear the honor in the sound of it. It's just I feel that's very emotional guitar that comes out. It draws out, it kind of draws you in with the sound to it, and I think it's a great end to a song that's talking about something that's it's a very serious topic. How brothers in arms, how soldiers view themselves, how they view each other, how they view their class of people across the world. It's an important topic, and just laid down here very beautifully.
The gist of the final lyrics of the song, we're fools to make war on our brothers in arms.
Yeah.
Sort of suggests that, look, those of us who really understand, have experienced, and know what battle is and does. In 1940, Pétain in France he was, I believe, prosecuted as a traitor because he acquiesced to the Germans coming in and occupying, France, portions of France. But he had been a general in World War One during the Battle of Verdun and the Battle of the Somme.
Yeah.
And where, just hundreds of thousands of soldiers were killed.
Yeah.
And
these are scales we know nothing about in these days. Yeah.
And there were more British soldiers killed on the first day of the Battle of the Somme than American soldiers killed in the Civil War.
Yeah.
This is just the first day of a 4-month battle. But in any case, but what the reason he did what he did is he had seen what armed conflict could do, and he wasn't going to be involved in doing it again. Now, that I am not trying to advocate the fact that there is never a justification for armed conflict between nations or what have you, or military action that involves killing the enemy is justified. I'm not saying that's not the case, but I believe that the sort of the honor, that you know better than I because of your service in the U.S. Army, and certainly anyone, because we know people who were in Iraq or Afghanistan or like the first Gulf War, and whatnot. These are good, decent people, did what they needed to do and whatnot. But the idea that that armed conflict creates a dangerous situation where you are potentially at risk of losing your humanity, depending on how you behave and how you go about what doing what needs to be done. And that's easy for me to sit and talk about it here. But it's something that needs to be kept in mind by, the powers that be, that, kind of look back to, earlier on the side, the man's too strong. What happens when the situation that you've either created or contributed to the creation of gets out of control, and a genie has come out of the bottle and you can't put it back?
Yeah.
What do you do then? And if you haven't thought about it on the front end, the subject matter of this song is there's a lot of substance there. I mean, it's a very meaningful, well-performed song that from the perspective of someone who's laying on the battlefield, waiting to die and pondering why they're there.
Yeah. And
that's what it's
I
about.
think that the people who have either been there or been prepared or have worked and trained to be there, whatever, that they'll feel that as they hear the song. I think the people that I wish would listen and feel it are the people, first of all, as we're discussing this notion of, yes, we should do this. And okay, well, if you're not one of the people that's going to have to go, I mean, let's think about this, right? And if you're one of the people that is going to go and you want to go because you want to have your time in the, whether it be the Civil War, World War I, World War II, Vietnam, history just over and over and over again shows us that when you have all these people rushing to enlist so they can go get their time of glory, you can't find anyone that actually gets there and it's like they anticipated, right? It doesn't work that way in war, and everybody needs to feel that and understand that. And I also agree with you, Mike. I mean, there's times where there are no other alternatives, and that is going to happen, and unfortunately we'll find ourselves in those situations. But more often than not, there's push, especially by people who aren't going to have to go themselves, and they should listen to a little more of this music.
Here.
So the bottom line, it's kind of some intense topics. I mean, war and military conflict and soldiers dying, obviously intense stuff, but a beautiful album of music, and this particular side especially on this, because it has this theme that moves through it, and I just think does it really well. Dire Straits put together a lot of good music over their time. Mark Knopfler's an amazing guitar player with a very unique style that is wonderful to listen to, and I'd encourage people to listen to some of his soundtrack albums that he has put out. He's done a lot of soundtrack for music and these other Dire Straits albums, but Money Not for Nothing for on the first side was a big hit. But I'd say, look, you want to give this a listen, put on side 2 here, and you're going to hear some great music and an important band, a great album, really great side of music, and Mike, a great conversation today.
Yeah. And I agree. And even though I opined earlier that, this isn't necessarily, the high point of Dire Straits output, in my opinion, the beauty of the music on this side and the subtlety and artfulness, the literary quality of the lyrics, it's exceptional. And I would join in your advocacy that anybody would be well served by sitting down and listening to this album and this side in particular. So
here.
So with that, Mark, we will see you next time.